morning. My name is Reg Price. I'm one of the founders of a company called Feedback Avatars. So we're about 3 or 4 months old. And my job today is to give you a really practical, off-the-shelf example of a use case for digital humans or virtual assistants. So we saw a problem out there. My partners and I have been in the market research industry for a long time, and to put it bluntly, surveys suck, don't they? You know, if I stood here and I said how you're feeling today, I wouldn't get much feedback. I wouldn't get much feedback because you're here as a group. It's not very individual. If I went and asked any of you as an individual, you would give me some good feedback about how you're feeling. So we have a problem in industry. It's a huge industry, but response rates are absolutely pitiful. Got this cheap and nasty NPS, which is being fired out there on enterprise feedback management systems that almost all large organizations have these days. And you know, our feeling is that this should be a beautiful thing. The giving of feedback and the receiving of feedback should be exactly what you said, Samuel. You know, there should be some sensitivity, some sensing, there should be good understanding, and there should be response. Otherwise, it all just falls into a black hole, right? So 3 or 4 months ago, when we got talking to my partners and started looking at the converging technologies out there, we saw a really exciting example to opportunity to go up another level. And so we've used a unique digital human to create a product. Super practical, addressing what we see as being a problem. So I'm going to unplug a few things. I'm going to plug this into, I'm going to run this out of mobile and just show you what a digital human interviewer looks like. Murray is our example. My glamorous assistant.
How about I do that?
Yeah, very good. Okay, so just while I'm firing this up, yes, it is up. There are a few things I want you to look for in this demo. So there's individualization, right? So we're talking to an individual. It's quite conversational, but not as conversational as the example that we saw before. Super simple script, just 3 questions. And one of the unique things about this is the way that we've constructed a data model which remembers what somebody has said last time. So one of the hallmarks of really good listening is remembering what people have said last time, reflecting that back to them in creative ways. So what we've done is created a data model that does this so that people feel listened to. And it's the avatar that's driving this conversation. And so what you'll notice is that the conversation drives off what we call change scenarios. So how a score actually changes drives what this conversation feels like. And so if I gave a different score, you get get a different kind of conversation. And then the last thing about this, just to keep an eye out for, right at the end, we try and display a bit of humility. Best practice in these sorts of things with virtual assistants, we believe, is not to pretend that this is not to pretend for it to be anything more than what it is. So you'll see a bit of humility in here as well. Can you? Okay.
Hi John, it's Miri here. Thanks for talking to me again about our Accelerate 100 program. As usual, it's just 3 simple questions. Are you okay to get going?
So this is for an example for a client of ours, Export New Zealand. Yes.
Great. My first question is, how well do you think the Accelerate 100 program is helping your company achieve its global growth aspirations from 0 to 10?
8.
Thanks, John, for your rating of 8 out of 10. You might be interested to know that the last time you gave feedback was in September 2018, and your rating was 5 out of 10. The team will be happy to hear your rating has risen since then. It will be good to understand more about how you are feeling. Let's start with the positives. Please tell me what has worked well so far.
We really love the idea of having a matchmaker mentor who helps us through our journey. Also, it's just been so helpful for us to sit back with somebody else and define our strategy better.
That's great. Are there any other positives you'd like to mention?
Yes, it's free.
Okay, my last question is about areas for improvement. Your score has risen since last time, but there may be more we can still do. Please tell me what we could do to improve the program to help achieve its growth ambitions.
We need to do a lot more about figuring out the best form of funding for us.
Thanks, John. Are there any other areas we can work on that you'd like to mention?
No.
That's really good, John. That's all we wanted to ask. We don't want to take any more of your time than we need to. Just thinking of follow-up actions and looking at your score change in particular. Given your score has risen, I'll send an action item to Ben Liebert and get him to touch base with you. Oh, by the way, I wanted to say that I'm a little new to this, so I hope you don't mind checking my transcription in case I didn't hear you right. I'll pop that up for you now and you can then click the submit button to share your feedback. Thanks for your time, John, and I hope I get the chance to talk to you again soon. Thanks. Bye now.
Okay, so you get the idea of using a digital human in an interview situation, and now you get the opportunity to make any changes if you wanted to. So I'll just submit the answers. So what's happening in the back end here? Thank you, assistant. A real assistant.
Robotic assistant.
A robotic assistant. So what's happening behind the scenes is that this is, so if I just wait for this to come up. What's happening behind the scenes is that this gets fed up into a relationship story. So if you can imagine somebody who has been participating over time, telling their story about a journey or a process that they've been through or a relationship, then you can look back into that relationship. You can see how the scores have changed over time, and maybe that journey is a really bumpy one. Maybe that journey is going like this, like that, like this, like that. And in our view, this data model, this longitudinal data model, really powers up your understanding. So we've got sensing, we've got understanding based on a unique data model, and that allows you to respond. So you saw that Miri, based on the change scenario, was able to route an action item to the appropriate person to be able to deal with that. And the way this works is that if a score is like a train crash and goes down like this, then that could well be routed to somebody different, maybe somebody more senior than it would be if everything is going really well. So just to explain the technology then, this is obviously fronted by a unique digital human. What we've done is build an orchestration layer, which is up in IBM Cloud, served up in mobile as you would have seen. You can also do this on PC, but we love the idea that it's on mobile. We feel like this is where people will really find a difference with this. And then what we've done is pasted together or built a series of technologies. So this is based on IBM Watson Assistant. We've scripted templates out of this. We've built these data models, or a longitudinal data model in the way that I explained to you before, coded that up into Watson. We have built some interview functionality. So if you say to Miri, could you please repeat that question? I decided I wouldn't do that, but she can go back to the previous question. There's the submit type functionality, so there would be about a dozen types of functionality that's really specific to running digital human interviews that you actually don't encounter somewhere else. And then we're in the midst of building a UI, which means that we don't have to build all of this. A client could for themselves. And if I just go back to the previous slide, so just to finish off then, I think the benefits for this are potentially immense. So for those people who want to get into something using a digital interview, want to get into the AI journey, want to do with something on the shelf, something that you can experiment with in bite-sized chunks, then I think something like this is a really good starting point. All the feedback that we've got so far, and remember we've only been running 3 or 4 months, is that people love this, they find it really different, find it really engaging, it really tangibly demonstrates innovation for the companies who are doing this. We also know that it uplifts satisfaction, and we know that we get a different type of quality of feedback. Writing a script for a questionnaire and writing a conversation for a questionnaire, hugely different. When we started with this, what we wrote sounded horrible on a digital interviewer, on a virtual assistant. And so what we've learned for ourselves is that how you speak and how you write, completely different. Therefore, how you run a conversation needs to be completely different as well. Hence, you sort of saw that hint of the humility at the end. Mary said, I'm new to this. So just have a look at how I've transcribed what you've said and make any changes. So we think that really works. And and finally, what we know is that one of the most embarrassing things that many organizations who are really dedicated to good customer experience do is run horrible, horrible surveys. So we want to try and change the world just a little bit using digital humans in this way. All right, so.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, of course.
Thank you, Tony, by the way. Very interesting. How data hungry is, because I think the mobile idea is also great, how data hungry is the digital avatar?
Like when you're actually delivering it up on mobile, do you mean? Yeah. So we're pre-caching everything up.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Oh, okay, I'll repeat the question. So the question was, how data hungry is this mechanism? So the answer to this is not very in the way that it's delivered. So I've put this on wireless, on Wi-Fi here, but it can run I've run it out of 3G. It can be, so it'll run out of 3G, runs perfectly out of 4G. So we're pre-caching up all the data that we need to be able to run this conversation. And so I think that's one of the very interesting aspects of this kind of use case. You know who the person is when they come in, so you can pre-cache up any data. The avatar, the digital human interviewer, is running the interview, so it's not like a virtual assistant where you don't know who they are, you don't know, they could ask you one of 1,000 questions, so your scripting challenge is completely different to this. And so that's why we feel like this is a really, really doable use case, and I think that's why Samuel has chosen this. Gives you a feeling that this is actually something that you could do, and you could do quite easily. So that's why we've done it that way. We're experimenting with more sophisticated things, like in real time searching for phrases that have been said now, and phrases that or word proximities that might have been mentioned in the past, pulling them up in real time and saying something like, oh, you just mentioned stock availability. You mentioned that back in April. Obviously, it's an issue for you. Can you tell me a bit more about what you're feeling? So that will be a bit more data hungry to do that. But right now, not much. So thank you for your question.